Hello friend, and welcome back to Science for Sleep. Tonight, we're drifting into a world that existed long before mountains took their modern shapes or oceans settled into familiar basins. A world where every continent on Earth fit together as one, forming a single sweeping landmass known as Pangea. It's one of the most remarkable chapters in our planet's deep history. A time when dinosaurs had not yet appeared, when ancient forests stretched across a continuous landscape, and when Earth's surface moved at a pace so slow it felt like breathing in geological time. As you settle into a comfortable position, let your breath loosen and fall into its own rhythm. There's nothing to hold on to right now. Just the gentle idea of a world drifting through ages almost too long to comprehend. Geologists estimate that Pangaea began forming more than 300 million years ago, drawn together by the slow motion of tectonic plates moving on currents deep beneath the crust. These plates still shape the continents today, shifting imperceptibly beneath the places we call home. And somewhere inside this ancient story rests a quiet question that has captivated researchers for decades. If Earth once gathered all its land into one supercontinent, will it ever do so again? Some scientific models suggest it might, and the answer may surprise you as we drift deeper into the night. If you enjoy these quiet journeys, I invite you to subscribe. And if you feel comfortable, to leave a comment sharing where you're listening from tonight. It helps others find their way to this calm corner of the world, one sleepy traveler at a time. For now, you can let the pace slow even further, allowing your thoughts to loosen as the story of this ancient world begins to unfold around you. Thank you for spending this moment of calm with me. I'm glad you're here. Pangea was a moment in Earth's history when all the continents we know today were gathered into one. Instead of scattered land masses separated by oceans, there was a single sweeping expanse surrounded by a vast global sea. If you picture a modern map, with the continents drifting far apart, Pangea was their opposite. Everything connected, everything touching, everything part of one continuous shape. Africa pressed against North America. South America curved softly into the edge of Africa. Europe and Asia formed long arcs that stretched across the top of the supercontinent. It was a world united by slow, steady motion deep within the Earth. Scientists believe Pangea began forming around 335 million years ago. At that time, the land wasn't fixed in place the way maps suggest today. It drifted slowly atop the semi-fluid mantle, guided by heat rising from Earth's interior. These movements happened so gradually that an inch of shift could take centuries. Yet given enough time, these gentle pressures were enough to gather nearly every landmass on the planet into one colossal piece of crust. Mountain chains formed where plates collided, and long rifts opened in regions where the crust stretched and thinned. The world was changing constantly, just at a pace too slow for any living creature to notice. The climate of Pangea reflected this unusual arrangement. Without wide oceans between major continents, weather systems behaved differently. Moisture often concentrated along the coasts, while the immense interior, far from the stabilizing influence of the sea, may have been dry, harsh, and prone to temperature extremes. Despite these challenges, life spread across the supercontinent. Early reptiles, ancient forests, and small amphibians traveled freely across land that today spans entire hemispheres. Fossils found on opposite sides of the world match precisely because the regions they come from were once neighbors on Pangea's continuous surface. Modern coastlines can feel permanent, but Pangea reminds us that Earth is always shifting. Mountain ranges in North America line up with those in Western Europe because they were once part of the same long chain. Fossils in India match those in Antarctica because both regions were connected. Even the shape of the Atlantic Ocean tells the story of Pangea's slow breakup, its widening basin a lingering echo of the moment when the supercontinent began to divide. Looking at this ancient world, the present-day map becomes less fixed and more like a snapshot, one frame in a slow geologic film that has been playing for billions of years. Pangea is a reminder that Earth has never stopped moving and never will. Its story is written in coastlines, in mountain routes, in the subtle drift of continents still inching across the surface of the planet today. A quiet, patient motion, shaping the world beneath our feet, one breath of deep time at a time. When we imagine continents, it's natural to picture them as fixed pieces of the world. They feel permanent, solid, and unchanging beneath our feet. But in the scale of deep time, the continents behave more like slow-moving rafts drifting across the surface of the planet. Their motion is so gradual that an entire lifetime passes without anyone noticing the slightest shift. Yet over millions of years, these small movements accumulate, shaping oceans, raising mountains, and guiding the evolution of life in ways that are both subtle and profound. The engine behind this motion lies deep beneath the crust, in the slow, steady churn of Earth's mantle. Although the mantle is solid rock, it flows very slowly under intense heat and pressure, moving with the consistency of warm clay. Heat rising from the core creates convection currents in this layer. Rock warms, rises, cools, and sinks again in a gentle, continuous cycle. These currents press against the tectonic plates above them, nudging them forward in movements often measured in inches per year. But given enough time, even an inch per year is enough to shift continents across entire hemispheres. Earth's crust is divided into several major plates and many smaller ones. Some plates carry continents. Others carry ocean floor. Where plates meet, their interactions shape much of the planet's geography. At divergent boundaries, they pull apart, allowing new crust to form as magma rises from below. At convergent boundaries, plates collide, pushing land upward to form mountain ranges or forcing one plate beneath another in a process known as subduction. Along transform boundaries, plates slide past each other, generating slow tension that occasionally releases in sudden jolts felt as earthquakes. These boundaries may seem far removed from everyday life, yet they are responsible for the landscapes, climates, and coastlines that define the modern world. During the era of Pangea, these motions were well underway, but their effects unfolded across spans of time too vast for any creature to perceive. The continents inched closer together as mantle currents guided them along ancient paths. Mountain ranges rose where plates collided, stretching across the supercontinent in long chains that would later fragment into the ranges we recognize today. Oceans narrowed and shifted, land masses rotated slowly, aligning themselves into the massive, unified shape of Pangea. Everything seemed still to the creatures living then, yet beneath the surface, the planet was constantly reorganizing itself. Deep time has a way of softening our sense of urgency. When we imagine the Earth not in days or centuries, but in millions and hundreds of millions of years, the planet feels calm and steady. Its movements, though slow, are purposeful. Continents drift like quiet travelers, following paths shaped by heat, pressure, and the gentle pull of forces that have been at work since the planet first formed. And within that slow motion, Pangaea took shape, a temporary moment in Earth's long story, destined to break apart again as the plates continued their patient journey across the mantle. The formation of Pangaea was not a single event, but a long sequence of movements shaped by the slow rhythm of plate tectonics. Hundreds of millions of years before the supercontinent existed, Earth's land masses were scattered across the globe in smaller continents and island chains. They drifted, rotated, and collided, following paths set by the convection currents deep beneath the crust. Each motion was subtle on its own, but across vast stretches of time, these motions brought separate worlds together. What began as distant fragments of land gradually merged into something unified and immense. One of the earliest steps toward Pangaea's formation involved the ancient continents of Laurentia, Baltica, and several smaller landmasses. These regions collided to form a continent known as Euramerica. The collision raised mountain ranges that stretched across what is now North America and Western Europe. These ancient peaks, worn down by hundreds of millions of years of erosion, still exist today as the Appalachian Mountains in the United States and the Caledonian Ranges in parts of Scotland, Norway, and Ireland. Though their modern forms are far gentler than the towering ranges they once were, they carry quiet clues about the world before Pangaea began to take shape. Further south, the massive continents of Gondwana were assembling. Gondwana included what would become Africa, South America, Antarctica, Australia, the Arabian Peninsula, and the Indian subcontinent. These regions, too, drifted slowly along the mantle's circulating currents, adjusting their positions with movements so subtle they would be invisible within a lifetime. Over time, Gondwana grew into a vast southern continent, covering a significant portion of the globe. Meanwhile, Euramerica continued to shift, edging closer to Gondwana through steady, patient motion. As these enormous landmasses approached one another, the collisions that followed reshaped the planet. The convergence between Euramerica and Gondwana created immense pressure along their boundaries, folding and compressing rock into long belts of mountains. The Hercynian and Variscan ranges that once stretched across Europe formed during this phase, along with additional segments of the Appalachian chain in North America. These ancient mountains were once connected, part of a single continuous system, raised by the same collisions that contributed to Pangaea's assembly. Slowly, the continents locked into place, fitting together like pieces of a puzzle drawn across millennia. Oceans narrowed between them, their basins shrinking as the land masses closed in. Eventually, the last remaining gaps disappeared, and Earth's surface settled into the unified shape we now call Pangaea. For millions of years, it remained a single world, its coastlines tracing a wide, curved boundary that wrapped around the vast global ocean known as Panthalassa. Though the creatures living within this landscape never sensed the slow motions that shaped it, the ground beneath them was part of a planet in constant transformation. In the quiet language of geology, Pangaea's formation was the result of countless small motions guided by forces deep within the Earth. Each collision, each shift, each rising mountain contributed to the creation of a world unlike any that exists today. And though Pangaea eventually broke apart, the marks of its creation remain etched into the rocks, fossils, and landscapes of our modern continents, offering a soft reminder of the long, patient story written in the planet's drifting crust. Life on early Pangaea existed in a world that felt both expansive and interconnected. With every major landmass joined into one supercontinent, animals and plants could spread across enormous distances without encountering the natural barriers that separate ecosystems today. Forests, swamps, deserts, and river valleys formed long, continuous habitats that stretched from regions that would one day become the Americas all the way to areas that would eventually form Europe, Asia, and Africa. Creatures did not know of continents or boundaries. To them, the world was simply open land, shaped by climate and terrain rather than oceans. During the time when Pangaea reached its fullest form, life was moving through the late Paleozoic and early Mesozoic eras. The dominant animals were not yet dinosaurs, though their earliest ancestors were beginning to appear. Instead, the continents were home to a range of species that now feel distant and unfamiliar. Synapsids, often called mammal-like reptiles, roamed across wide plains. Some were small and quick, feeding on insects and plants, while others grew large and sturdy, living in herds that migrated across broad territories. Dimetrodon, with its distinctive sail-like spine, lived millions of years before the dinosaurs and wandered parts of what are now North America and Europe. Plants were evolving too, creating ecosystems that would feel almost alien to a modern eye. The dominant trees were not flowering plants, but ancient relatives of conifers, cycads, and towering lycophytes. Vast forests spread along humid coastal regions, while fern-filled wetlands supported amphibians that depended on both land and water to survive. These early ecosystems were shaped heavily by climate. The central regions of Pangaea were thought to be dry and seasonal, while the coasts, closer to the global ocean, experienced more stable rainfall and milder temperatures. This contrast created distinct habitats that influenced the distribution of species across the supercontinent. Because Pangaea was unified, species could move freely across thousands of miles. Fossils of the same small reptiles appear in Africa, South America, and India, offering clear evidence that these distant regions were once joined. Glossopteris, an ancient plant with broad, tongue-shaped leaves, is found on multiple modern continents as well, showing just how connected Pangaea's landscapes once were. These fossils are like quiet signatures left behind by life that experienced the world as one continuous place, long before oceans divided it. This mobility had profound effects on evolution. When land masses are connected, species mix and spread, reducing isolation and creating large, uniform ecosystems. But as Pangaea slowly began to rift apart, populations were separated by widening oceans, leading to new evolutionary paths. The breakup of the supercontinent would eventually help create the incredible diversity of life seen in the Mesozoic era, including the rise and spread of dinosaurs. But during Pangaea's earliest chapters, life existed in simpler, broader patterns, spanning enormous regions with ease, shaped by the quiet movements of plate tectonics and the vast, slow story of the Earth beneath them. In thinking about this ancient world, it becomes clear that Pangaea was more than land fused together. It was an era where life moved through open landscapes without the barriers that define our modern geography. A world unified by the slow, patient drift of continents, carrying with them the early chapters of evolution across the quiet expanse of deep time. The climate of Pangaea was shaped by its size more than anything else. When a continent grows large enough, its interior becomes isolated from the stabilizing effects of the ocean. Modern coastlines receive gentle breezes, steady moisture, and temperature regulation from nearby seas. But Pangaea's central regions sat far inland, surrounded by thousands of miles of land in every direction. Without the ocean's calming influence, the middle of the supercontinent likely experienced harsh swings in temperature, scorching heat during the day and cooler conditions at night. Many models suggest that vast deserts may have stretched across these interior zones, shaped by dry winds and seasonal extremes. Closer to the coastlines, the climate was different. Moisture from the global ocean, Pangaea, could reach these edges more easily, feeding forests, wetlands, and river systems. These coastal belts likely supported a richer variety of life than the interior deserts, offering stable rainfall and more moderate temperatures. In some regions, seasonal monsoons may have formed as warm air rose from the heated land during the summer months, drawing in moist air from the ocean and releasing it as rain. The patterns resemble monsoon systems today, but would have unfolded on a scale shaped by Pangaea's size and arrangement. Another key influence on Pangaea's climate was its position on the globe. During parts of its existence, the supercontinent straddled the equator, meaning that some regions experienced strong tropical heat, while others moved through more temperate or even polar conditions. This wide latitudinal span produced a variety of climate zones across a single connected landmass. Dense forests may have grown near the equatorial regions, while cooler, drier climates stretched across areas closer to the poles. Fossil evidence suggests that glaciers existed in parts of the southern hemisphere during Pangaea's early formation, indicating that even a massive supercontinent could host cold climates alongside hot, arid ones. Pangaea's shape also affected the movement of wind and ocean currents. Today, the oceans are divided into several basins, each with its own circulation patterns. But during the age of Pangaea, Pangaea covered most of the planet, guiding air and water in broader, simpler loops. This offered fewer chances for moisture to travel far inland, which may explain the dry central deserts predicted by many climate models. Meanwhile, the smaller inland sea, known as the Tethys Ocean, helped moderate temperatures in the region surrounding it, creating warmer and more humid environments that supported early reptiles, amphibians, and lush plant life. Understanding the climate of Pangaea helps explain both the distribution of life and the geological changes that followed. When the supercontinent eventually began to break apart, new coastlines formed, new ocean currents developed, and entire ecosystems shifted as regions moved into different climate zones. The world we know today, with its varied continents, distinct weather patterns, and diverse habitats, emerged slowly from these changes. But during its long existence, Pangaea carried its own unique climate system, shaped by size, position, and the steady forces beneath the crust. In imagining this ancient climate, the planet feels both familiar and distant. Heat rising over desert expanses, gentle rains falling along coastal forests, winds curving across a unified landscape. Each part reflects a world governed by slow, patient rhythms, unfolding quietly across the vastness of deep time. Large continents influence climate in ways that aren't immediately obvious. When land masses expand across wide areas, they reshape the movement of air and water around them, creating patterns that differ from those on smaller continents or islands. One of the most important effects is the way temperature behaves. Oceans warm and cool slowly, acting as stabilizers that soften the extremes of heat and cold. Land, however, changes temperature more quickly. As a result, the interiors of massive continents often swing between hotter days and cooler nights, as well as between warm summers and cold winters. On a continent as large as Pangaea, these contrasts would have been even more pronounced, affecting everything from rainfall to wind. Another reason large continents influence climate is the way they block moisture. Oceans are the primary source of atmospheric water. When air currents carry moisture inland, mountains and long stretches of dry land can weaken those currents, causing the moisture to drop out early or dissipate before reaching the central regions. On a supercontinent, where the distance from coast to interior can span thousands of miles, much of the moisture never makes it far inland at all. This is why many climate models predict enormous deserts in the heart of Pangaea, places untouched by the steady rains that nourished coastal forests and wetlands. The shape and orientation of a continent also play a role in guiding wind patterns. Air tends to flow from high-pressure areas to low-pressure areas, but the arrangement of mountains, valleys, and coastlines influences how these winds move. Large continents can create persistent wind belts, dry zones, and regions where storms form more predictably. Pangaea's broad shape likely created long, stable wind patterns that differed from those we see today, with some winds sweeping across vast stretches of land without interruption. This would have shaped the climate in subtle but important ways, distributing heat and moisture unevenly across the supercontinent. Ocean currents, too, respond to the presence of large landmasses. Today's continents divide the oceans into separate basins, each with its own circulation system. But during Pangaea's existence, most of Earth's water belonged to a single global ocean, Pangaea. With fewer barriers to guide its movement, the ocean's currents formed simpler, larger loops, driven by heat from the equator and cooler temperatures near the poles. These vast circulations guided the distribution of warm and cold water around the planet, influencing both marine and coastal climates. Meanwhile, the smaller Tethys Ocean played a significant role in warming nearby regions, contributing to humid tropical environments that appeared along its shores. Large continents also affect climate through feedback loops. Dry regions tend to stay dry because they lack vegetation, which means less moisture returns to the atmosphere. Forested regions tend to remain wet because plants release water vapor, reinforcing rainfall patterns. Pangaea's vast deserts and coastal forests likely maintained these contrasts over millions of years, creating stable zones where specific ecosystems could persist. In thinking about how large continents shape climate, the world begins to feel like a delicately balanced system. Land masses guide winds, oceans carry warmth, and ancient forests influence rainfall. Pangea's size made these interactions even more pronounced, creating a climate unlike anything on Earth today, one shaped by quiet forces moving slowly across an unimaginable number of years. The animals that lived on Pangea moved through a world that was both ancient and slowly transforming. Before the age of dinosaurs reached its peak, the supercontinent was home to a wide range of species that now feel almost otherworldly. These early creatures wandered across open landscapes without the barriers that separate continents today. There were no Atlantic waters dividing Africa from the Americas, no vast stretches of ocean isolating Australia from Asia. Life spread across connected forests, deserts, river valleys, and coastal plains, adapting to climates that shifted gradually as the land continued to drift. Among the most distinctive inhabitants were the synapsids, often called mammal-like reptiles. They were not mammals yet, but they carried some of the early traits that would eventually lead to them. Some synapsids were small, moving quickly through vegetation in search of insects or plants. Others, like the large herbivore Edaphosaurus or the more carnivorous Dimetrodon, grew to impressive sizes and lived in regions that today lie on different continents. Their fossils appear in North America and Europe, strong reminders that these distant lands were once part of the same connected world. Amphibians thrived as well, especially near wetlands and rivers that trace the edges of Pangea's coasts. These early amphibians were far larger than many of the species we know today, some reaching lengths that rivaled modern crocodiles. They depended on water for reproduction, which tied them closely to the wetter regions of the supercontinent. Forested lowlands and swampy environments provided the moisture and shelter they needed, allowing them to spread widely across areas that would one day become dramatically separated by oceans. Reptiles also played a central role in Pangea's ecosystems. The Triassic period, which overlapped with the later stages of Pangea's existence, marked the rise of early archosaurs, a group that would eventually give rise to crocodiles, pterosaurs, and dinosaurs. These early reptiles were diverse, ranging from small, nimble hunters to larger, more heavily built species, adapted to the dry expanses of the interior. While dinosaurs were still in their early forms at this time, they were beginning to appear in scattered regions across the supercontinent. Their eventual rise would be shaped in part by the breakup of Pangea, which created isolated environments where new species could evolve. In the coastal regions, life in the water was just as varied. The oceans surrounding Pangea were home to fish, marine reptiles, and early invertebrates that swam through warm currents circulating from the equator to the poles. Some marine reptiles, like ichthyosaurs, were fast, streamlined swimmers that resembled dolphins in shape. Others had long, paddle-like limbs and moved slowly through shallow seas hunting for fish and small invertebrates. These creatures were part of an ocean ecosystem influenced by Pangea's unified coastline, which guided currents and shaped the distribution of marine life. Plants also formed a crucial foundation for life on Pangea. Dense forests of conifers, cycads, and ferns stretched across humid regions, while hardy shrubs and drought-tolerant trees grew in the arid interior. These plants created habitats that supported everything from small insects to large herbivores. Fossilized pollen and ancient roots found on modern continents reveal how widespread these early ecosystems were, connecting regions that are now separated by vast distances. The animals of Pangaea remind us that Earth's past was filled with forms of life both familiar and strange. They lived in a world shaped by slow-moving continents, shifting climates, and landscapes that connected places that today lie oceans apart. In imagining their movements across this unified land, the planet begins to feel both ancient and alive, its long story unfolding quietly beneath the drifting crust. Beneath the crust of the Earth, far below the landscapes that once formed Pangaea, the mantle moves with a slow and steady rhythm. Even though it is made of solid rock, the mantle behaves like an incredibly thick, flowing material over long periods of time. Heat rising from the core creates gentle currents that push and pull against the tectonic plates at the surface. These currents are known as convection currents, and they are the quiet engine behind continental drift. They move with a pace so gradual that their motion cannot be felt, yet they are powerful enough to reshape the entire surface of the planet over millions of years. Mantle flow begins with heat generated deep within the Earth. Radioactive decay and residual warmth from the planet's formation produce enough energy to keep the interior hot. Lighter, warmer rock from the lower mantle rises slowly toward the surface, while cooler, denser rock sinks downward in response. This creates a cycle of movement, not unlike the way water circulates when heated from below, though on a scale and timescale far beyond ordinary experience. As the mantle circulates, it carries with it slow-moving currents that press against the underside of the crust, guiding the movement of continents like a gentle hand shifting pieces of a puzzle. Tectonic plates are able to move because they rest on this layer of flowing rock. Some plates are large and contain both continental and oceanic crust, while others are smaller and more fragmented. The boundaries where these plates meet are zones of significant geological activity. Even during the era of Pangaea, these boundaries played a crucial role in shaping the landscape. Where plates converged, mountains rose as the crust compressed and folded. Where plates diverged, rift valleys formed as the crust thinned and pulled apart. Subduction zones, where one plate slid beneath another, generated deep trenches and contributed to the formation of volcanic arcs far above. Mantle flow is not uniform. It varies by region and changes slowly over time. Certain areas experience stronger upward currents, lifting sections of the crust and creating regions of higher elevation. Other areas experience downward flow, drawing the crust lower and forming basins and depressions. These subtle differences influence the shape of Pangaea, causing parts of the supercontinent to sag or rise gently over millions of years. Even though the surface appeared stable to the creatures living on it, the land was always undergoing slow adjustments as the mantle shifted beneath it. Scientists study mantle flow using a combination of seismic waves, laboratory simulations, and computer models. When earthquakes occur, they send vibrations through the earth that travel at different speeds depending on the material they pass through. By measuring these speeds, researchers can create detailed maps of the mantle structure, revealing areas that are hotter, cooler, rising, or sinking. These insights help explain the patterns of plate movement that shaped Pangaea and continue to shape the continents today. They also reveal that mantle flow is far more complex than once believed, involving swirling patterns, layered movement, and deep reservoirs of material that circulate over extraordinary timescales. Understanding mantle flow adds depth to the story of Pangaea. The supercontinent did not drift into place by coincidence. It was guided by the immense forces rising from the planet's interior. Continents move slowly, carried by the currents beneath them, following paths determined by heat, pressure, and gravity. When seen through the lens of deep time, the continents appear almost weightless, gliding across the mantle with an elegance that belies the unimaginable forces at work below. In imagining these slow, rhythmic motions, the planet begins to feel alive in a subtle way. The surface we walk on is only the topmost layer of a dynamic world, shaped by processes that unfold quietly over millions of years. Beneath Pangea, the mantle flowed in steady patterns, guiding the continents into their unified form and setting the stage for the next great chapter in Earth's long, patient evolution. The breakup of Pangea did not begin with sudden fractures or dramatic shifts. Instead, the earliest signs appeared quietly as long, subtle depressions formed in the crust. These depressions, known as rift valleys, were created when tectonic forces slowly pulled the land apart. Even though the movement was incredibly gentle on a human timescale, the crust responded by stretching and thinning. Over millions of years, this stretching produced elongated valleys bordered by steep cliffs, signaling the beginning of a process that would eventually reshape the map of the world. Rift valleys form when the underlying mantle exerts upward pressure on the crust, weakening it until it begins to split. The crust doesn't break all at once, it fractures in segments, creating a series of faults that sink slowly into the earth as the land stretches. These valleys often begin as subtle dips in the landscape, but as the process continues, they deepen into long troughs that can span hundreds of miles. Lava sometimes rises through the thinning crust, filling parts of the rift with new rock and creating regions of volcanic activity that leave long-lasting marks in the geological record. During the early stages of Pangea's breakup, several major rift systems began to develop. One of the most significant formed between what are now Africa and North America, marking the earliest outlines of the Atlantic Ocean. Another stretched across the region that would eventually separate South America from Africa. These rifts often followed paths of weakness in the crust, places where earlier collisions had fractured the land or created zones of deep structural stress. Even though the supercontinent still appeared solid at the surface, these hidden weaknesses were beginning to guide its future shape. As rift valleys deepened, water from nearby oceans and inland seas gradually found their way into the new depressions. Over long spans of time, these water-filled valleys widened into narrow seas. In the later stages, as the crust continued to pull apart, these narrow seas expanded and eventually grew into fully formed ocean basins. The Atlantic, now one of the world's largest oceans, began as just one of these quiet rifts, an almost invisible change that grew slowly, layer by layer, into a vast expanse of open water. Rift valleys not only marked the beginning of Pangea's separation, but also created new environments. Volcanic activity around these rifts produced fresh rock that shaped local landscapes, while the gradual sinking of the crust created long, linear basins that collected sediment and supported early ecosystems. Over millions of years, plants and animals adapted to these evolving habitats. Fossil evidence from regions such as eastern North America and northwestern Africa shows traces of these early rift environments, preserved in layers of sediment that record the slow transformation of the land. The formation of rift valleys reveals how a supercontinent begins to change. From above, the land may have looked stable, but deep beneath it, forces were slowly redirecting the planet's future. What started as gentle stretching eventually turned into the widening of oceans and the creation of entirely new coastlines. The process took millions of years, unfolding with the kind of quiet patience that defines much of Earth's geological history. In imagining these early signs of separation, it becomes easier to see the planet as a living, shifting system, one that evolves slowly, creating new landscapes, new climates, and new opportunities for life. Even the largest and most unified continents begin their transformations with simple, almost imperceptible motions, guided by the steady forces moving beneath the crust. The existence of a single supercontinent had a powerful effect on the evolution of life. When all the major land masses were connected, species could move freely across enormous distances, traveling through forests, deserts, swamps, and coastal plains that stretched uninterrupted for thousands of miles. This openness created a world where many organisms shared similar habitats, where the boundaries we recognize today simply did not exist. A creature that lived in what is now South America could wander into regions that would one day become Africa, India, or Antarctica, unaware that these places would eventually drift far apart. The lack of geographic barriers influenced evolution in ways that feel almost impossible to replicate in the modern world. One of the consequences of this connected landscape was the relatively low degree of biodiversity among early species. When populations are separated by oceans, mountains, or extreme climates, they evolve independently, adapting to their unique environments. But on Pangaea, many species inhabited the same broad regions, encountering similar challenges and resources. This created large, widespread populations that changed more slowly than those confined to isolated environments. Fossil evidence shows that certain reptile and plant species were nearly global in distribution during this time, appearing across lands that now lie on different continents. Their widespread presence is a quiet reminder of how unified the world once was. At the same time, Pangaea's climate zones played a role in guiding evolution along subtle pathways. The dry interior deserts favored creatures adapted to heat and limited water, while coastal regions supported more moisture-loving species. Forests and wetlands along the edges of the supercontinent provided habitats for amphibians and early reptiles, while cooler regions toward the poles allowed other groups to flourish. These contrasts encouraged diversification within species, even if major barriers to movement were minimal. Over time, creatures that roam Pangaea began to adapt differently depending on where they lived, forming early branches in evolutionary lineages that would later expand dramatically when the supercontinent broke apart. The breakup of Pangaea introduced a second, equally important influence on evolution: isolation. As rift valleys deepened and new oceans formed, populations that once mingled freely became separated by expanding distances of water. These separations created the conditions for rapid diversification. Species that had once shared similar traits began to evolve independently, responding to the new environments created by shifting climates, changing coastlines, and the emergence of distinct continents. This isolation was a key factor in the rise of dinosaurs, which spread and diversified across the newly forming landmasses, after Pangea began to fragment during the Triassic and Jurassic periods. Fossils reveal these shifts with remarkable clarity. Bones of similar species found on different continents show how populations once connected by land eventually diverged. Patterns in plant fossils illustrate changes in vegetation as climate zones shifted and new ecosystems developed. Even ancient pollen grains preserved in rock layers tell the story of how life adapted as Pangea transformed from a unified world into separate continents drifting slowly across the globe. Each discovery offers a quiet insight into the profound impact that geography has on evolution. The legacy of Pangea's influence on life can still be seen in the modern world. Species found on continents that are now widely separated often share ancient ancestry, their similarities rooted in the time when their lands were joined. Meanwhile, the incredible diversity of life that emerged after Pangea's breakup reflects the power of isolation to shape new forms. In imagining these long evolutionary arcs, the world begins to feel like a living story, one shaped by drifting continents, changing climates, and the patient, ongoing creativity of life adapting to a slowly shifting Earth. The first signals that Pangea would not remain whole forever appeared quietly, long before the supercontinent showed any obvious signs of separation. Deep within the crust, slow shifts in pressure and temperature began to create zones of weakness that stretched for hundreds of miles. These regions formed the early outlines of what would become the Great Rift Systems, long linear features where the land was gently beginning to pull apart. To the animals and plants living on the surface, nothing seemed different. Forests still stretched across vast distances, rivers still wound through ancient lowlands, and the ground felt as solid as it always had. Yet beneath that apparent stillness, forces were slowly preparing the world for an enormous transformation. One of the most striking pieces of evidence for this early activity comes from the Triassic and Jurassic periods, when the Earth experienced widespread volcanic eruptions across regions that are now separated by great distances. These eruptions were not isolated events. They formed a vast geologic province known as the Central Atlantic Magmatic Province, or CAMP. The rocks left behind by CAMP span parts of North America, South America, Africa, and Europe, indicating that these regions were still connected when the magma rose to the surface. The sheer scale of this volcanic activity suggests that the crust was being stretched and weakened, opening pathways for molten rock to escape. These eruptions marked one of the quiet but powerful signs that Pangea had begun to change. As the crust continued to stretch, rift valleys deepened and widened, some filled with lakes that persisted for millions of years, leaving behind sedimentary layers that preserved delicate fossils of fish, early reptiles, and even footprints of creatures moving along the water's edge. These rift valleys formed the early templates of coastlines that would one day border the Atlantic Ocean. What seems like a vast ocean today began as narrow basins that slowly increased in size as the crust continued to thin. Eventually, these basins connected with the global ocean, allowing salt water to flow in and transform them into long, shallow seas. The process of rifting also influenced the climate of the surrounding regions. As the continental crust stretched, new topography emerged: high ridges, deep valleys, and volcanic plateaus. These changes altered patterns of wind and rainfall, creating localized climates that differed from the old, unified system that had dominated Pangea for millions of years. Fossil pollen and ancient soils found in these regions show how vegetation shifted in response to new environmental conditions. Species that once occupied broad, continuous habitats began to encounter different climates and landscapes, subtly guiding their evolutionary paths long before the continents fully separated. Deep within the mantle, convection currents played their part in guiding these changes. Regions where hot mantle material rose toward the surface created uplift, stretching the crust and forming rift zones. Elsewhere, cooler, sinking material pulled at the edges of the crust, increasing tension along fault lines. These forces acted together in ways that were invisible on the surface, but decisive in shaping the planet's future. The rifts that began during this time would eventually widen into major ocean basins, making the formation of the Atlantic one of the most significant reorganizations of Earth's surface in the last 200 million years. In imagining these early signs of change, it becomes clear that Pangea's breakup was not a single event, but a gradual process unfolding across immense spans of time. The ground beneath ancient forests shifted millimeter by millimeter. Rivers adjusted their courses as the land tilted and stretched. Lakes formed and disappeared. What looked like a stable world from the surface was actually transitioning toward a new arrangement, one that would shape the continents, climates, and ecosystems of the modern Earth. These early rifts were the first quiet steps in a long journey, marking the beginning of the end for the supercontinent and opening the path toward the world's present form. The surface of Pangea held landscapes as varied as the continents we know today, yet they were arranged in patterns shaped by the size and position of the supercontinent. Across its immense interior, far from the moderating influence of the ocean, stretched deserts that may have been among the largest in Earth's history. These deserts formed where dry air sank and warmed, sweeping across open plains with little moisture to offer relief. Ancient wind-blown sandstones found in what is now North America, Northern Africa, and parts of Asia suggest that dunes once drifted across vast stretches of land, their shapes shifting slowly as the wind carried grains from place to place. These deserts would have been quiet, harsh, and expansive, landscapes where life survived only in forms adapted to heat and long stretches without water. Closer to Pangea's coast, the scenery was entirely different. Moisture carried in from the global ocean fed forests of conifers, cycads, and ferns that covered lowlands and river valleys. These forests supported a rich array of early reptiles, amphibians, and insects that thrived in the humid air. The thick vegetation and constant growth cycles created layers of organic material that would later transform into coal deposits, still mined around the world today. Fossils from these regions reveal delicate fern fronds, ancient seeds, and preserved tree trunks that tell stories of environments once lush and thriving. These coastal forests offered a refuge from the dryness of the interior and likely displayed a range of climates, from warm, swampy wetlands to cooler, temperate woodlands depending on latitude. Between the forests and the deserts lay transitional regions shaped by both climate and elevation. Broad savannas and open floodplains carried rivers that wound through the supercontinent, sometimes stretching for hundreds of miles before reaching the sea. These river systems were essential lifelines in an environment that could shift dramatically over geological time. During wetter periods, rivers expanded into wide lakes and marshlands, supporting diverse communities of plants and animals. During drier intervals, they shrank back into narrower channels, leaving behind sediments that preserved tracks, bones, and plant material. Some of the most detailed fossils from Pangaea come from these intermediate environments, where the interaction between water and land created ideal conditions for preservation. The coastlines of Pangaea formed the boundary between the supercontinent and the vast ocean known as Pangaea. These shores were shaped by long, sweeping curves, rather than the intricate coastlines we see today. Without the numerous islands, peninsulas, and narrow inlets that define modern continents, Pangaea's coast likely felt broad and open, with gentle tidal patterns and wide beaches. Marine life flourished in the shallow waters along these coastal shelves, where sunlight reached the sea floor and supported early reefs, fish, and marine reptiles. Evidence of these ancient coastlines remains in layers of limestone, sandstone, and marine fossils found on opposite sides of the world, but formed in the same ancient environments. In the southern part of Pangaea, glacial deposits reveal colder climates that existed early in the supercontinent's history. These regions, which included parts of what are now Antarctica, India, Africa, and South America, once lay closer to the poles and experienced cooler temperatures. As the continent slowly drifted northward, the climate warmed, eventually transforming icy landscapes into forests and deserts. This movement across different climate zones added yet another layer of diversity to Pangaea's environments, shaping the distribution of plants and animals as the supercontinent shifted over millions of years. Imagining these landscapes, vast deserts glowing under ancient suns, forests breathing softly along humid coasts, river valleys carrying life across great distances, helps bring Pangaea into focus. It was a world of contrasts, shaped by ancient climates and slow geologic processes. A world where every landscape was connected, yet each held its own quiet, distinctive character, preserved in the rocks and fossils that remain today. Deep beneath the surface of the Earth lies a layered world that shaped the rise and fall of Pangaea. Even though the ground feels solid and unmoving, the crust rests atop a dynamic interior made of materials that shift slowly under intense heat and pressure. This inner structure is what makes continental drift possible. Without the steady motion of the mantle, continents would never have collided to form Pangaea, nor would they have separated to create the arrangement of land and ocean we see today. Understanding these inner layers offers a quiet glimpse into the forces that shape the ancient world. Earth's interior is divided into three main layers: the crust, the mantle, and the core. The crust is the outermost skin of the planet, a thin shell of solid rock that includes both the continents and the ocean floors. Beneath it lies the mantle, a vast region of hot, slowly flowing rock that makes up most of Earth's mass. Though the mantle is solid, its rock behaves plastically over long periods of time, allowing it to deform and circulate in response to changes in heat. At the center lies the core, split into a liquid outer layer made of molten iron and nickel, and a solid inner core compressed into crystalline form by immense pressure. Heat rising from the core drives much of the mantle's motion, influencing the crust floating above it. The movement of the mantle occurs through convection, a process where heat causes material to rise, cool, and sink again in a continuous cycle. In some places, hotter mantle rock pushes upward, creating regions of uplift that thin the crust and form rift zones. In others, cooler, denser material sinks deeper into the mantle, pulling sections of the crust downward along subduction zones. These large-scale motions guide the tectonic plates, carrying continents with them as though they were gentle rafts drifting across a slow-moving sea of stone. Though the process is too slow to sense in any human lifetime, the cumulative effect over millions of years is profound. During the existence of Pangaea, these mantle currents contributed to the supercontinent's formation and eventual breakup. As ancient plates converged, mountains rose where the crust compressed. Far below, mantle material shifted to accommodate these new structures. Later, when the currents beneath certain regions began to change direction or intensify, they applied new stresses to the crust, encouraging rifting and separation. These deep forces were not sudden or violent. They acted with a steady persistence, creating subtle weaknesses in the crust that would eventually widen into oceans. The Atlantic, for instance, can trace its origins back to mantle upwelling that lifted and stretched the crust beneath what are now Africa, Europe, and the Americas. Volcanic activity also reveals clues about Earth's interior during the age of Pangea. Magma rising from the mantle filled cracks and weak zones in the crust, creating vast volcanic provinces that left behind thick layers of basalt. These regions, preserved today in multiple continents, show that the mantle beneath Pangea was highly active. Some eruptions were powerful enough to influence global climate, releasing gases and particles into the atmosphere that altered temperatures and rainfall patterns. Over time, these volcanic events marked key moments in the supercontinent's slow transformation, representing the mantle's quiet signatures written across the surface. Seismic waves generated by earthquakes allow scientists to map the structure of Earth's interior and understand how it behaved in the past. When these waves travel through the planet, they speed up or slow down depending on the temperature and density of the material they encounter. By studying their paths, researchers can reconstruct patterns of mantle flow and identify regions where ancient plates once sank or rose. These maps reveal that the Earth's interior retains long-term memory of past movements, storing traces of Pangaea's assembly and fragmentation deep within its layers. Earth's interior may be hidden from view, but its influence reaches every landscape on the surface. The mountains, coastlines, and continents we recognize today are the result of slow, patient processes that began far beneath the crust. In imagining this vast inner world, quietly circulating and shifting over immense spans of time, the planet feels both ancient and alive, carrying continents forward on a journey guided by heat, pressure, and the steady pulse of deep geological rhythms. Continents may appear solid and immovable, but they rest on a foundation far more dynamic than it seems. Beneath every mountain range, coastline, and plain lies a balance of forces that keeps Earth's crust floating atop the mantle. This balance is known as isostasy, and it is one of the quiet principles that allowed Pangaea to rise, shift, and eventually fragment. The idea is simple at its core. Lighter materials float on top of heavier materials. Just as an iceberg extends deep into the water beneath it, continents extend into the mantle, supported by the density differences between rock layers. Over long spans of time, this floating balance adjusts as landscapes change, guiding the slow motion of Earth's surface. The crust is composed of two main types of rock: continental crust and oceanic crust. Continental crust is thicker but less dense, made mostly of granitic rocks that allow it to ride higher on the mantle. Oceanic crust, in contrast, is thinner and denser, formed from basaltic rock that sits lower, creating the deep basins where oceans collect. This difference in thickness and density explains why continents remain above sea level and why they do not sink into the mantle despite their enormous mass. They float because their weight is balanced by the buoyant forces beneath them, much like wood floating on water. Even towering mountain ranges follow this principle. The higher the peaks rise above the surface, the deeper their roots extend into the mantle. Isostasy also plays a role in shaping how continents respond to changes in their surface. When large amounts of rock are eroded from mountains, the crust becomes lighter, allowing it to rise slowly in response. This uplift can continue for millions of years, long after the original forces that created the mountains have faded. The opposite occurs when heavy loads accumulate on the crust. Massive ice sheets during the ice ages, for example, pressed down on the land beneath them, causing the crust to sink. When the ice melted, the land began to rise again, a process that continues in regions such as northern Canada and Scandinavia. These adjustments happen gradually, but they reveal how sensitive the crust is to changes in weight. During the time of Pangea, isostasy influenced both the height of the land and the formation of the supercontinent's interior basins. As plates collided to form towering mountain ranges, the crust thickened and sank deeper into the mantle, creating stable roots that anchored the peaks. In other regions, erosion lowered the land, allowing the crust to rebound and adjust. Meanwhile, areas where volcanic activity poured lava across the surface became heavier, altering the isostatic balance and causing the crust to sink slightly. These quiet adjustments helped shape the topography of Pangaea, determining where deserts, forests, and inland seas would eventually form. The floating nature of the continents also contributed to the way Pangaea broke apart. As mantle currents shifted, certain regions of the crust were lifted or stretched, weakening the land and creating the conditions necessary for rifting. When the crust thinned, it became more buoyant in some places and less buoyant in others, influencing where fractures developed. Over millions of years, these subtle imbalances guided the separation of the supercontinent, allowing new oceans to open between drifting plates. The Atlantic Ocean, for instance, began to form when regions of the crust became thin enough for magma to rise and create new oceanic crust, while adjacent continental blocks floated higher as they moved apart. Isostasy adds a layer of insight into the quiet processes shaping our planet. Continents float not because they are light in an absolute sense, but because they rest on a mantle that adjusts to balance their weight. This floating equilibrium underlies the motion of plates, the rise and fall of land, and the formation of supercontinents like Pangaea. In imagining this delicate balance, the Earth feels calm and steady, its surface drifting gently atop a vast interior that moves with slow, patient rhythms stretching across deep time. The breakup of Pangaea was a process that unfolded so slowly that no creature living at the time could have sensed a change. The ground beneath their feet felt stable, The forests and deserts seemed eternal, and the distant horizon gave no hint of continents drifting apart. Yet deep below the surface, the forces guiding the supercontinent's formation were beginning to reverse. Mantle currents shifted direction. Regions of the crust stretched and thinned. Long rift valleys deepened. These quiet geological signals marked the beginning of a transformation that would eventually divide Pangaea into several major landmasses and reshape Earth's future geography. The first major division occurred as Pangaea split into two large supercontinents, Laurasia in the north and Gondwana in the south. Laurasia would eventually become North America, Europe, and much of Asia. Gondwana held the lands that would form Africa, South America, Antarctica, Australia, Arabia, and India. This separation was not sudden. It began with the slow widening of a rift system that traced across the middle of Pangaea, creating a long, shallow depression that grew deeper as the crust continued to pull apart. Over millions of years, magma rose through the thinning crust, forming new rock that pushed the landmasses further from each other. Eventually, water flowed into the widening gap, forming narrow seas that hinted at the oceans to come. As Laurasia and Gondwana drifted apart, their coastlines formed the early outlines of the Atlantic Ocean. The Atlantic began as a narrow ribbon of water, bordered by steep cliffs and volcanic plateaus that marked the edges of the growing ocean basin. With each passing century, the separation increased by a distance too small to notice in a human lifetime, mere inches at most. Yet this steady motion added up. Over tens of millions of years, the ocean widened into the vast expanse we recognize today. The gentle drift that created it continues even now, as North America and Europe slowly move farther apart. Meanwhile, Gondwana itself was beginning its own journey toward fragmentation. The massive landmass contained several regions that had been assembled through earlier collisions, and the ancient sutures where these pieces met became zones of weakness. As mantle forces pulled in different directions, new rifts formed within Gondwana, setting the stage for future separations. India, once nestled near Antarctica and Australia, began to move northward at a surprising speed, geologically speaking, racing toward Asia and eventually forming the Himalayas. Africa and South America drifted in opposite directions, their coastlines matching like puzzle pieces that had once fit together perfectly. The breakup of Pangaea also influenced climate patterns across the planet. As continents pulled apart, new coastlines formed and air circulation patterns shifted. Regions that had once been deep within the interior of the supercontinent now found themselves near the ocean, experiencing changes in temperature and rainfall. Marine ecosystems expanded as new shallow seas opened. Environments that had been dry grew wetter, while others transitioned from forest to desert as the land moved into new climate zones. Life adapted in response, evolving along separate paths as populations became increasingly isolated. Throughout this entire process, the forces driving the continents remained subtle and steady. There were no abrupt changes, only slow adjustments shaped by heat rising from the mantle and the gradual spreading of oceanic crust. The breakup of Pangaea took tens of millions of years, a timescale so vast that it feels almost still. Yet this quiet motion is responsible for the arrangement of continents we see on maps today. The mountains, oceans, and coastlines of the modern world are the long-term result of this slow separation, carried forward by the planet's deep interior rhythms. In imagining the breakup of Pangea, the world begins to feel both ancient and dynamic. Continents drift apart like gentle travelers, following pathways carved into the mantle. Ocean basins widen, landscapes shift, and the Earth moves through its long cycle of assembly and separation, guided by forces that operate far below the surface, shaping the planet one quiet moment at a time. The Atlantic Ocean, one of the defining features of the modern world, began as nothing more than a narrow rift cutting slowly through the crust of Pangea. At first, this rift was just a subtle depression, an elongated valley bordered by rising cliffs of fractured rock. To the animals that walked across the land, it would have seemed like an ordinary lowland, shaped by the same quiet forces that carved rivers and basins elsewhere. But beneath the surface, the crust was thinning as tectonic forces gently pulled the land apart. Heat rising from the mantle created upwellings that pushed against the underside of the crust, encouraging it to stretch and fracture. Over millions of years, this subtle tension marked the beginning of an ocean that would come to circle the globe. As the rift deepened, magma from the mantle rose to the surface, filling cracks and forming new layers of basalt. These flows often spread across wide regions, building volcanic plateaus that would later become the edges of the continents. The Central Atlantic Magmatic Province, a vast region of volcanic activity preserved today across North America, South America, Africa, and Europe, formed during this early stage. The sheer scale of this volcanic province reveals just how active the land had become. These eruptions signaled that the crust was nearing the point where it could no longer hold itself together as a single piece. Eventually, sections of the crust sank deeper along the fracture zones, allowing seawater to enter and transform the rift into a long, narrow sea. This new body of water marked the first visible separation between what would become North America and Africa. At first, it may have resembled a broad river or shallow inlet, stretching across a landscape that had once been unified. But as the crust continued to pull apart, the sea widened. Water from the global ocean flowed steadily into the expanding basin, deepening and broadening the growing divide. The land on either side moved only a few inches each year. Yet over millions of years, these inches accumulated into hundreds of miles. The early Atlantic became a defining boundary between continents, one that would continue to expand long after the breakup of Pangea was underway. As the ocean basin grew, new crust formed at its center through a process known as seafloor spreading. Magma rose from the mantle, cooled, and solidified into basaltic rock, pushing older crust outward in both directions. This continuous creation of new ocean floor helped widen the Atlantic further, carrying North America and Europe away from Africa and South America. Today, the Mid-Atlantic Ridge marks the location where this spreading continues. It is a long underwater mountain chain stretching from the Arctic to the southern Atlantic, rising quietly from the deep as fresh crust forms along its crest. Though the ridge is hidden beneath the waves, it represents one of the most active geological features on Earth. The birth of the Atlantic Ocean reshaped global climate patterns as well. As the ocean widened, it allowed new currents to form, carrying warm water northward and cooler water southward. These currents influenced temperatures across nearby continents, contributing to new climate zones that guided the evolution of plants and animals. Coastal ecosystems developed along the edges of the Atlantic, replacing the arid interior landscapes that once characterized central Pangaea. Over time, these coastlines supported forests, wetlands, and thriving marine environments that still shape regional climates today. Even now, the Atlantic continues to widen at a slow and steady pace. The continents drift apart inch by inch, guided by the same deep forces that first opened the rift in Pangaea. The ocean that began as a narrow valley has grown into one of the Earth's largest bodies of water, touching the lives of countless species and shaping weather patterns around the globe. In imagining its beginnings, the Atlantic feels less like a permanent feature and more like a chapter in Earth's long story. A quiet basin born from the slow separation of a supercontinent, expanding gently through deep time as the planet continues its subtle ongoing transformation. Long before satellites and seafloor maps revealed the shifting nature of continents, fossils offered the earliest and most compelling clues that the world was once joined as one. These remains, preserved gently in layers of rock, form a quiet record of life moving across Pangaea's unified landscapes. When scientists began comparing fossils found on different continents, they noticed patterns that were too precise to ignore. Identical species appeared in places separated today by vast oceans, an observation that made little sense unless the continents had once been connected. Fossils became the soft-spoken evidence that stitched together the story of Pangaea. One of the most iconic examples is Mesosaurus, a small freshwater reptile that lived around 280 million years ago. Mesosaurus fossils are found only in South America and Southern Africa, two regions now separated by the wide Atlantic Ocean. Because Mesosaurus lived exclusively in fresh water, it could not have crossed such an ocean. The simplest explanation is that South America and Africa were once joined, allowing the reptile to move freely across connected lakes and river systems. When the continents later drifted apart, each carried fragments of its ancient habitat and the fossils within them along their separate paths. Another important fossil comes from Glossopteris, a plant whose broad, tongue-shaped leaves once covered large stretches of southern Pangaea. Glossopteris forests grew across what are now Africa, South America, India, Australia, and Antarctica. Their seeds were too heavy to drift across oceans, yet the fossils appear across all 5 continents with striking consistency. These remains tell the story of a single continuous landmass that supported vast forests stretching across regions that would eventually drift into distant corners of the world. Even Antarctica, now covered by ice, preserves Glossopteris fossils in its rocks, a quiet reminder that it once held temperate landscapes along the edges of the supercontinent. Another piece of the puzzle comes from Lystrosaurus, a sturdy herbivorous reptile that lived during the early Triassic period. Fossils of this creature appear in Africa, India, and Antarctica. The presence of Lystrosaurus in Antarctica is especially striking, suggesting that the region was not always frozen, but once lay closer to the equator in a milder climate. Lystrosaurus was not a strong swimmer, nor was it adapted for crossing cold oceans. Its distribution makes sense only if these landmasses were connected, forming part of a continuous southern region within Pangaea known as Gondwana. Patterns in ancient rocks also offer quiet confirmation of Pangea's unity. Coal deposits formed from swampy forests appear in matching layers across North America and Europe, linking regions that now lie on opposite sides of the Atlantic. Mountain belts, such as the Appalachian Range in North America and the Caledonian Mountains in Scotland and Scandinavia, share identical structures and rock types. These ranges were once part of the same continuous chain, split apart as Pangaea began to fragment. The rocks preserve their story with gentle precision, revealing how once connected landscapes drifted slowly into new configurations. Even small fossils, such as pollen grains and tiny marine creatures, help trace the pathways of continental drift. These microscopic remains are carried easily by wind and water, creating global markers that change as continents move into different climate zones. Their presence in sedimentary layers provides detailed snapshots of past environments, showing how conditions shifted as Pangaea assembled and later separated. Together, they create a quiet, layered archive of the world's ancient geography. In imagining these fossils scattered across the globe, the map of modern continents begins to feel less fixed. Species long gone from the Earth continue to whisper their stories through the rocks that hold them. Each fossil is a subtle reminder that the land beneath our feet was once part of something larger, connected across deep time, unified by slow tectonic motion, and gently carried forward into the world we know today. One of the most striking pieces of evidence for Pangaea's existence lies not in fossils or coastlines, but in the mountains themselves. When we look at a world map today, the great mountain ranges appear isolated, separated by oceans, shaped by different histories, and formed on continents that seem to have little connection. Yet when geologists compare the rocks within these ranges, a quiet pattern emerges. Mountains on opposite sides of the Atlantic share the same structures, the same minerals, and the same ancient origins. These matching signatures reveal that long before the ocean divided them, they once formed a single continuous chain, rising and eroding across the unified landscape of Pangaea. One of the clearest examples comes from the Appalachian Mountains in North America and the Caledonian and Variscan ranges in Europe and northern Africa. When Pangaea was assembled, these mountains formed as a result of multiple collisions between ancient landmasses. Rocks in the Appalachians contain minerals and structural features identical to those found in Scotland, Ireland, Norway, and Morocco. These similarities are not superficial. They persist deep within the crust, showing that the mountains were once connected end to end. What now appears as separate ranges were originally sections of one enormous mountain belt that stretched across the heart of Pangaea. The formation of these ranges began hundreds of millions of years before Pangaea reached its full shape. As continents like Laurentia, Baltica, and Avalonia drifted toward one another, the crust began to crumple and fold under immense pressure. This compression uplifted long bands of rock, creating peaks that may have rivaled the Himalayas in height. Over time, erosion softened their outlines, wearing down the peaks and carrying sediment into nearby basins. But even though the mountains weathered, the rocks within them preserved the memory of their creation. Today, when scientists compare these rocks across different continents, they find unmistakable matching layers, each one a calm, geological reminder of a time when all these regions were one. Another example lies in the Atlas Mountains of northern Africa, which share ancient roots with the Appalachian system. Although the modern Atlas Range was shaped by later tectonic events, some of its foundation rocks were once welded to North America during the assembly of Pangea. When the Atlantic Ocean opened, these ancient rocks were left behind on opposite sides of the widening gap. The same story repeats in regions across Western Europe, where folded mountain belts share ages and mineral compositions with formations now found along the eastern United States and Canada. These connections are subtle but unmistakable, bridging continents through deep geological time. In the southern hemisphere, the remnants of the Gondwanan mountain belts tell a similar story. Rocks in Antarctica, South Africa, India, Australia, and South America show matching patterns that formed when the Gondwana portion of Pangea collided with smaller landmasses. Glacial deposits, folded strata, and metamorphic rocks across these regions reveal that they once lay side by side, part of a single, sweeping continental structure. Even though Antarctica is now frozen and isolated, its ancient rocks preserve warm climate signatures that align seamlessly with formations found in southern Africa and Australia. These old mountain belts are not just evidence of Pangea. They mark the long, patient processes that assembled the supercontinent. They formed slowly as continents drifted together, rose to great heights under tectonic pressure, and eroded over millions of years. When Pangea eventually broke apart, the mountains were carried with the drifting continents, fragmented into separate pieces that retained their shared origins. Modern coastlines may give the appearance of isolation, but the rocks tell a different story, one that reaches across oceans with quiet precision. In imagining these ranges connected as one, the world of Pangea becomes easier to picture. Mountains stretching unbroken across thousands of miles, shaped by collisions deep in Earth's past, remind us that the planet's surface is always changing. Pangea may be the most famous of Earth's supercontinents, but it was not the first, and it will not be the last. The planet moves through a long, repeating cycle in which continents assemble into a single large landmass, remain together for tens of millions of years, and eventually drift apart again. This pattern is known as the supercontinent cycle, and it is one of the slowest rhythms in Earth's geological story. Like the steady rise and fall of deep ocean swells, the cycle unfolds over hundreds of millions of years, driven by the same mantle forces that once gathered Pangea and later pulled it apart. Understanding this cycle helps explain not only Earth's past, but also its distant future, revealing that continental motion follows patterns far more organized than they might seem at first glance. Before Pangea existed, other supercontinents came and went. Rodinia, assembled around 1 billion years ago, united many of the world's ancient cratons into a single massive landmass. Earlier still, a supercontinent known as Columbia or Nuna formed roughly 1.8 billion years ago, followed by even older configurations such as and Kinnerland. Each of these ancient continents formed through collisions similar to those that created Pangea, and each eventually fragmented as tectonic forces continued their slow work beneath the crust. Though their exact shapes and boundaries are still studied and refined, the rocks that once formed their cores remain tied together through shared minerals, magnetic signatures, and fossil clues that reveal long-lost connections across deep time. The supercontinent cycle is guided by convection currents in the mantle. As heat rises from the core, it creates zones where the crust is pushed upward, causing plates to move apart. In other regions, cooler mantle material sinks, drawing crust downward and encouraging plates to converge. These patterns shift gradually over millions of years, creating alternating phases of assembly and breakup. When continents spread out across the planet, new ocean basins grow between them, and volcanic activity along mid-ocean ridges increases. When continents begin to converge again, subduction zones form along ocean margins, consuming old oceanic crust and drawing land masses slowly back together. This interplay is subtle but persistent, shaping the planet's geography through cycles longer than any other in Earth's history. During Pangaea's existence, much of the oceanic crust surrounding it was relatively young. As the supercontinent pulled apart, this crust continued to form and spread, widening the Atlantic and Indian basins. But as millions of years pass, much of that oceanic crust will eventually be consumed in subduction zones beneath other continents. Over extremely long stretches of time, this consumption draws continents toward one another, gradually decreasing the distance between them. The Pacific Ocean, for example, is slowly shrinking as its edges sink into deep trenches. Meanwhile, the Atlantic continues to widen, but even this expansion will not last forever. Eventually, the balance of forces will shift, initiating the early stages of a new cycle. Scientists believe that within the next 200 to 300 million years, the continents will once again begin to assemble into a single landmass. Several models have been proposed to imagine what this future supercontinent might look like. Some predict the formation of Ambience, where the Americas drift toward Asia as the Pacific closes. Others imagine Pangea Ultima, a configuration formed when the Atlantic begins to narrow again, and the Americas collide with Africa and Europe. Another model, known as Novo Pangea, suggests an entirely different arrangement shaped by new spreading centers beneath the oceans. While these predictions differ in detail, they share one idea: Earth's continents are not finished moving. Their journey continues, guided by the deep forces that have shaped the planet since its earliest days. In imagining these future worlds, the long arc of Earth's history becomes easier to sense. Continents drifting slowly toward one another, oceans opening and closing over spans of time too vast to measure, and the quiet pulse of the mantle carrying the planet through cycles older than any life we know. The next supercontinent is not a question of if, but when. A distant chapter waiting to unfold in Earth's ongoing story, written in the slow, patient motion of geological time. The continents we recognize today may feel permanent, but their arrangement is only a moment in a much longer story. As Earth continues its slow drift through deep time, the forces beneath the crust will gradually reshape the surface again. Scientists use data from plate boundaries, mantle convection patterns, and the history of previous supercontinents to imagine what the next global landmass might look like. While the details vary from model to model, each scenario offers a quiet glimpse into Earth's distant future. These possibilities unfold not in decades or centuries, but in millions of years. Time frames so vast they almost become soothing to imagine. One of the most widely discussed possibilities is a configuration called Ambience. In this scenario, the Pacific Ocean continues to shrink as its dense oceanic crust sinks beneath the surrounding continents. Subduction zones around the Pacific, sometimes called the Ring of Fire, gradually consume the seafloor, drawing the Americas westward and Asia eastward. Over tens of millions of years, these movements bring the northern continents together near the pole. The Arctic Ocean becomes compressed, and the land masses of North America, Asia, and perhaps even parts of Europe merge to form a new supercontinent clustered in the northern hemisphere. Amasia would alter global climates dramatically, creating a range of extreme seasonal patterns near its interior. Another model proposes a world known as Pangea Ultima, a configuration that echoes the ancient Pangea, but forms through a different set of motions. In this scenario, the widening Atlantic eventually slows and reverses as new subduction zones develop along its edges. Africa collides with Europe, closing the Mediterranean and creating a massive mountain range. North and South America drift eastward, eventually reconnecting with Africa and Eurasia. The Atlantic Ocean narrows, then disappears, replaced by a new interior landmass surrounded by a single global ocean. Pangea Ultima would likely create vast interior deserts, similar to those of the ancient supercontinent, along with lush coastal regions influenced by the surrounding sea. A third possibility, called Novo Pangea, imagines a future driven by continued spreading in the Atlantic and Indian Oceans. In this scenario, the Pacific closes entirely, drawing Asia and the Americas together. Australia continues its northward drift and fuses into Southeast Asia, while Antarctica moves northward into warmer waters. Africa shifts slowly eastward and eventually merges with the land masses forming along the equator. The resulting supercontinent stretches along a more elongated shape, its geometry shaped by seafloor spreading centers that remain active beneath the modern Atlantic. Novo Pangea would produce coastlines that differ dramatically from those of today, offering a reminder that even oceans as vast as the Pacific can vanish over deep time. A final model, known as Orica, imagines a complete reorganization of Earth's plate boundaries. In this version of the future, new rift zones appear in unexpected places, while old boundaries shift or disappear entirely. Continents are gradually pulled into new configurations that do not resemble any previous supercontinent. The Atlantic and Pacific are partly replaced by new basins, and land masses merge along different patterns shaped by long-term changes in mantle flow. Though speculative, Orica demonstrates the flexibility of Earth's surface and how multiple outcomes are possible depending on the interplay of forces far beneath the crust. Each of these scenarios shares a common theme. Earth is still moving. The continents will not remain in their current arrangement forever. Whether the next supercontinent forms in the northern hemisphere, reconnects the Atlantic margins, stretches across the equator, or emerges from entirely new tectonic activity, the planet will continue its long cycle of assembly and separation. These future worlds exist only in models for now, but they provide a quiet perspective on the scale of time. They remind us that the landscapes we know are temporary, shaped by subtle pressures that act across billions of years. In imagining these far-off continents drifting together, the Earth feels like a vast, patient system, guided by rhythms that move far below the surface. The future is already unfolding in the slow motion of tectonic plates, If Earth forms another supercontinent, the climate that develops across its surface will feel unlike anything we experience today. The arrangement of land and ocean strongly shapes weather systems, guiding winds, storm patterns, rainfall, and temperature. With all the continents gathered into a single mass, the planet's climate would reorganize itself around this new geography. The interior of the supercontinent would lie far from the moderating influence of the ocean, while its coasts would face vast stretches of uninterrupted sea. These contrasts would produce conditions that echo those of ancient Pangea, though influenced by a modern atmosphere and the long-term evolution of Earth's climate system. One of the defining features of a future supercontinent would be the development of a massive, arid interior. Oceans act as stabilizers, absorbing heat and releasing it slowly. Regions close to the coast feel their influence in steady breezes, mild seasons, and predictable rainfall. But deep within a supercontinent, those stabilizing forces fade. Moisture from the ocean rarely travels far inland, and air masses lose their humidity quickly as they cross stretches of dry ground. As a result, the interior would likely experience extreme temperatures, very hot summers, very cold winters, and long droughts broken occasionally by brief, intense storms. Ancient dune fields, similar to those that filled central Pangea, could form again, spreading across thousands of miles. Closer to the coast, the climate would look entirely different. Warm currents along one side of the supercontinent could produce humid, rainy environments with dense forests and thriving ecosystems. On the opposite side, where cold currents rise from the deep ocean, misty coasts and cool, fog-laden climates might dominate. The shape of the supercontinent would influence how winds circle the globe, potentially creating powerful monsoon systems along certain coasts. These seasonal winds could bring periods of intense rainfall followed by long dry intervals, sculpting river valleys and wetlands that stretch far inland. The position of the supercontinent relative to the equator and poles would also shape its climate. If the future landmass formed closer to the equator, large regions would experience tropical or subtropical conditions, with storms fed by warm ocean waters. If it formed nearer the poles, glaciers could expand along certain edges, while northern or southern interiors might remain cold and dry for much of the year. The tilt of Earth's axis, combined with the presence of a large landmass, would create strong seasonal contrasts, affecting everything from wind patterns to the migration routes of future species. Volcanic activity along the edges of the supercontinent could also play a role in shaping climate. When continents collide or are drawn together by subduction zones, magma often rises through the crust, forming long volcanic arcs. These eruptions release gases that can warm or cool the planet, depending on their composition and frequency. A period of intense volcanic activity could darken skies and temporarily lower global temperatures, while long-term releases of carbon dioxide might warm the atmosphere over millions of years. The climate of a future supercontinent would be shaped not only by its geography, but by the deep geological processes that accompany its formation. Ocean circulation patterns would shift dramatically as well. Today's oceans are divided into basins separated by continents, creating looping currents that move heat around the planet. A future supercontinent would disrupt these pathways, forcing currents to reorganize into new patterns. Some models suggest that vast circular currents could develop around the edges of the supercontinent, concentrating heat along certain coastlines and cooling others. These currents would influence global weather, guiding storm tracks and shaping atmospheric patterns that ripple across the entire planet. Imagining the climate of a future supercontinent reveals just how closely Earth's atmosphere is tied to the shape of the land. Weather, temperature, rainfall, and even the distribution of ecosystems depend on the positions of continents drifting slowly across the mantle. A new supercontinent would bring new climates, new landscapes, and new environmental rhythms, an entirely fresh chapter in the planet's story. If Earth's continents reunite into a single landmass, the plants and animals living on that world would face a landscape shaped by new coastlines, new climates, and a new arrangement of ecosystems. Just as Pangaea influenced the evolution of early reptiles, forests, and amphibians, a future supercontinent would guide the development of whatever species inhabit it. The pressures of isolation, competition, and environmental change would gently steer life along pathways shaped by the geography of this new world. Though the specifics of future organisms cannot be predicted, the principles that guide evolution offer a calm and steady framework for imagining the possibilities. In the broad interior regions, species would need to withstand extreme temperature swings and limited access to water. Plants might evolve deep root systems capable of reaching far below ground moisture, while animals could develop behaviors that reduce heat stress or conserve hydration. Salt flats, dune fields, and hardy vegetation would shape the daily life of creatures adapted to long stretches of dry air. These interior ecosystems might look harsh at first glance, but as with all environments, life would find subtle strategies to thrive in spaces that appear almost empty. Along the coastlines, conditions would be far more varied. Some shores would feel humid and warm, fed by ocean currents that carry heat toward land. Forests could develop thick canopies that shelter diverse communities of birds, insects, and mammals. Other regions, those touched by cooler currents, might support grasslands, kelp-rich coastal waters, or broad wetlands where rivers meet the sea. These coastal zones would become hubs of biodiversity, much as the margins of Pangea once supported ecosystems that spread across thousands of miles. As continents merge, populations that were once separated could come into contact again. This reconnection would influence evolution in subtle ways. Species might hybridize, compete, or adapt as they encounter new neighbors. Some organisms might expand across large regions of the supercontinent, while others retreat into isolated niches shaped by mountains, valleys, or shifting climates. The ongoing adjustments between newly connected species would gradually shape the ecological character of the landmass. Volcanic arcs and mountain-building events along the supercontinent's margins would also affect the evolution of life. Rising peaks would create fresh habitats, cool uplands, sheltered valleys, and cloud-draped ridges where plants could diversify. Rivers flowing from these mountains would carve long paths through the land, creating corridors for migration and seasonal movement. Over time, these features would become natural boundaries that guide how species spread, separate, or adapt to their surroundings. Marine life would transform as well. The closure of old ocean basins and the formation of new ones would reshape migration routes, nutrient cycles, and the distribution of plankton, that support entire food webs. New shallow seas might appear along the edges of the supercontinent, offering spaces for coral reefs, coastal fish, and marine mammals to expand. Meanwhile, deep ocean trenches formed by subduction zones could influence the distribution of cold currents, guiding the evolution of species that depend on them. Rather than imagining a single outcome, it is more accurate to picture a landscape filled with possibilities, each shaped by slow changes in climate, geology, and the movement of species across new environments. A future supercontinent would not replicate Pangaea. It would create its own distinct patterns of life, guided by the conditions of its time. In this way, evolution would continue its steady work, shaping organisms in response to the world they inhabit. One feature, one challenge, and one opportunity at a time. As we come to the end of tonight's quiet exploration, the world of ancient landscapes and shifting continents settles into a softer focus. The details of Pangaea, its forests, deserts, mountains, and future echoes, can rest lightly now, drifting to the background like scenery fading at the edge of thought. You don't need to hold on to any part of it. The ideas can simply settle where they wish, easing into stillness as the night deepens around you. If your breathing has grown slower, or if your body feels heavier against where you're resting, that's perfectly natural. The calm that follows a long stretch of gentle curiosity has a way of softening the edges of the day. Let that feeling spread without effort. The world outside this moment can wait, and the quiet inside your own mind can take its place for now. Nothing else is required. You've spent time with vast continents and quiet processes, but here, at the end, there is only the ease of letting go. Let the imagery grow faint. Let the thoughts unwind until they no longer form complete shapes. All that matters is the comfort you feel settling in, steady and uncomplicated. Thank you for sharing this time tonight. May the rest that follows come to you easily, and may the calm you found here linger just long enough to carry you into sleep.